Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and this is the latest video in my series, Overhyped and Underrated. A video series in which I am joined by a special guest for each video, in which we pick 5 films we believe are either overhyped or underrated within a specific genre. Now, the quick disclaimer, these are just our personal opinions. Obviously, we're going against the majority on these thoughts, but it's just how we feel. And of course, I'm definitely looking forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section down below. So this week, I am joined by my friend Graham from Man vs. Film to discuss comedies. So, Graham, why don't you go ahead and kick it off?
Hi Larry, thanks for having me onto your channel to talk about overhyped or underappreciated comedy movies. And I feel I've got a hard task here because comedy movies are completely subjective. It's what you find funny that really makes it engaging for yourself. Personally, these are going to be my 5 picks of these movies that fall into those groups. We're going to have 2 that's overhyped and 3 that's underappreciated, and I, in all honesty, could have done a lot that I felt were underappreciated. That could just be my sense of humour though. But let's dive into it. So I used Rotten Tomatoes to get my scores. So we're going to start from the highest there and work our way down. So with 95% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes is Spy. Now, I won't say that Spy is a bad movie, it just feels particularly bland. It doesn't take any real chances. Melissa McCarthy had kind of fallen into a rut at this point and was doing the same thing over and over again. Pretty much the same with Paul Feig, just kind of started doing the same things. It felt a bit like The Heat, which I wasn't really too keen on either. The jokes were mostly pratfalls or sight gags and I didn't find them particularly funny when I watched it. The movie does have one standout, and that's Jason Statham, and that's pretty much because he's playing a kind of caricature of his normal character. He is the hard spy who is particularly always overlooked and is always kind of saying that he's done the most deadly things, and it's hilarious. But that just shows you the kind of movie that it could have been, which for me makes this something that is extremely overhyped. 95% should be somewhere around about the 50% mark for me. Second on my list, and this one is just up there with 62%, and that is Uncle Drew. Uncle Drew for me was an abomination, just something that I just could not stand from the start. It just wasn't funny. I kept expecting jokes to come and they just never landed. I'm not a big basketball guy. I never really knew who much of these people were, but I just knew they were in old man makeup and it should have been engaging and fun, but it was trite, it was repetitive, there wasn't a laugh to be had at all, and 65% is way too high. This should be down about 10% in my estimations. It just wasn't that funny, which is the most detrimental remark I have for a comedy. I love teen comedies, and you're going to see a couple of them in this bottom 3, and I think they're absolutely wonderful, and I think they're movies that may not always be the most stunning to look at or have the best performances, but if they're done well and they know what they're aiming for and they achieve that, I'm more than happy. One movie that I will always champion, that I have loved ever since I first saw it, is Eurotrip. I just found it to be incredibly hilarious from start to finish, and it's setup after setup, and it's jokes that you can see coming sometimes a while away, but I just found it to be unbelievably funny, and it's one that has stuck with me, standout moments. And whenever I find someone that has as much love for it as I do, you make a connection quoting the lines back and forward to one another about how just fantastic and amazing it is. I really love Eurotrip. I love the jokes about it. I love that score, the song that just perpetrates all the way through the movie. For me, this should have been a much bigger hit than it was, and it's good to see that it still has that kind of cult sensibility about it. For me, 47% is way too low for this thing. This should have been up in the high 80s. That might just be me. I'm going to cheat a little bit here and just put 2 movies in this one because they're very similar, and I'll explain why. They both have a score of 25%, and that is Super Troopers and Super Troopers 2, which I just utterly adore. I really like the Broken Lizard comedy group. Most of their movies seem to be in the bottom half of the Rotten Tomatoes fresh scale, and I think that is a complete atrocity. I think they're hilarious. They create wonderful characters, so much so that this got it was crowdfunded for the second one and got much more than they wanted, just because of the love of the characters. And even watching it now, where it has dated a little bit, I just don't care. It's the characters, it's their interaction, it's the fact that this comedy group are playing characters that all kind of love and know each other, and that just shines throughout the movie. And I love the camaraderie that just comes through in these performances, as well as having Brian Cox in them and being incredibly funny. For me, these are way up at the 80% mark, and I just think it's a travesty that they're down here, both of them languishing at 25%. The last movie I have on here is one that seems to be hated by a lot of people, and I find a lot of love for it. That movie is Not Another Teen Movie at 28%, and it is probably because it fits into that realm of teen comedy, the parody, but it's not as bad as Date Movie or Disaster Movie or those atrocities. That is a ridiculously funny movie that has really on the nose takes of a lot of John Hughes movies, a lot of 80s films, a lot of say typical teen comedies of the time, and some references to films as well. But most of the performances are kind of nudging and winking at the camera as if they know exactly what they're doing, as if they know the tropes that they're poking fun at. And I think it's a movie that kind of gets lumped down this low because it has some of that lowbrow humour, but it has some good writing and some good performances behind it. Every time I watch this movie, I laugh out loud. I think it's hilarious. I love the performances. I think Chris Evans is just wonderful in the lead role, and that for me is just a great film to recommend. I'm a fan of teen comedies. I'm a fan of John Hughes movies. This has everything, and at 28%, it's just plain wrong. Again, up in the 80s for me, it's just wonderful. So there we have it. Thanks for having me on your channel, Larry. Thanks for letting me ramble about movies. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that loves, but I'm going to throw it back to you. I can't wait to see your reaction on my list. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much for participating, Graham. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on over here and talk some comedies with me. Yet another longtime YouTube friend, but I'm so glad we finally did have this opportunity, and I got to connect with yet another friend from across the seas and discuss some comedies. Now, if you're not already, make sure that you go and subscribe to Graham at Man vs. Film here on YouTube. Make sure that you also go ahead and follow him on social media as well. Of course, those links are going to be in the description box down below. He reviews so many films. Like I personally am pretty proud overall at the content output here on the channel, but Graham takes it to another level. He gives a wide variety of great films to review, other film-related content as well. He's constantly pumping out really wonderful material. So make sure that you head over, check out the channel, and give him a sub. So comedies, oh, this is such a divisive genre for me. I seem to just have a weird palette of mean streak type of comedy that doesn't tend to agree with critical consensus as often as I would like, honestly. And of course, comedy is a very widespread genre that often commingles with some of the other genres to create wonderful little hybrids. But ultimately, let's kick things off with the first film I think is a bit overhyped, and this is going to be a shocker because it is a classic, and that's Blazing Saddles. Obviously, Mel Brooks is kind of the spoof king of cinema, kind of heralded as the one that did it right. Unfortunately, even in Mel Brooks's case, I don't find a lot of his films to be all that funny. Young Frankenstein is actually one of my all-time favorite comedies, period, and that's like the pinnacle, the peak for me. However, Blazing Saddles just doesn't quite hit it. It's a satire, but it's a satire that feels very dated to me. And it's a satire of an entire genre that finds itself blanketing too far to actually make it. And honestly, it's a big satire of basically an entire genre of filmmaking that spreads itself too thin to be as focused and funny as Mel Brooks's most successful films. The potty humor is more abundant here than it is in a lot of the others, and it just doesn't land for me. I know others think that campfire scene is just the best, and I'm not here for it. Also, a lot of other sticky situations in modern lens when you view this film. That's why I say it's dated. But even viewing it just as a straight up parody satire, it's just not very funny to me. Not sharp or witty enough to be a satire that I find to be a personal icon. My next overhyped comedy is another film I don't think aged very well, and that is Animal House. Oh, I know! Another classic that so many just deem as one of the funniest films ever to be made. I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of 80s comedies could have been put in this slot or on this list because they really just they didn't age very well at all. But the one that aged the worst is Animal House. It is problematic to the moon. I mean, it is full of just really cringy and inappropriate, gross jokes and humor, scenarios. I don't find the characters to be endearing in any way, and again, this type of junk comedy just doesn't work for me personally. So, Animal House, it had its time, I suppose, but the time has passed. Next up, I have my only underrated film on this list, and that is Euro Trip. I can't fully explain my love for this film because a lot of the other raunchy road trip type of movies that came out, and there were plenty in this time, I hate it. I thought they were terrible. And watching this film back, it certainly has some dated aspects to it as well. Some of these jokes we definitely border on like homophobia or misogyny, but everything is just so lighthearted. They don't dig into those mean tendencies and instead make more aloof jokes that are easier to digest and move past. I think our cast here is all really relatable, and a big key is that they're all really likable. You care about our mission at large, and you're having fun with them as well. The hash brown scene is still one of my favorite scenes ever. The nude beach. I mean, there's just so many iconic moments. Not to mention, Scotty Doesn't Know bangs to this day. Fire, bop, banger, period. Back to my overhyped films. Let's talk about Napoleon Dynamite. I didn't get it. This is one of those Sundance comedies that I just kind of sat there like, all right. Everybody around me thought it was hilarious. Obviously, it's quoted ad nauseum. The shirts, the Pedro, the all of it, and I just am like, okay. It's just too awkward. It takes everything to a too awkward state. I need to connect somewhere in a film to like be hooked in. Otherwise, I just kind of get bored. I'm disinterested in what's happening, and it just doesn't really make me laugh. I'll give it a chuckle here and there for Napoleon Dynamite, but it's not for me. And then my final overhyped comedy is Borat. Another one that everyone around me just loved and quoted incessantly. I never got. This is a satire that I can understand the praise for because it does have a lot more intellectual of a mission underneath with how it's spoofing people. But just the jokes and the gags and everything about it is just so blech and surface level and gross that I just didn't find it funny. I don't find a ridiculous accent the song funny. It just doesn't do it for me. This film didn't do it for me. I think it succeeds okay in what it's trying to do. It's just not my humor. What can I say? So those are my picks as well as Graham's picks for the most overhyped and underrated comedies of all time. What did you think of the films we picked? And more importantly, which films would you include in the most overhyped and underrated comedies of all time? Let us know either in the comment section down below, or you can hit both of us up on Twitter. Again, make sure that you head over to Man vs. Film here on YouTube as well as on the socials and give him a sub and follow for great film content. And while you're here, if you enjoyed the video, click that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on my latest videos, including all the latest in this series. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah! Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!